Live from the Clarity from Chaos studios, heard worldwide, it's Dave Campbell. On every episode, Dave and his guests explore, discuss, and work on solutions to some of life's biggest challenges. So, if you're ready, be prepared to be enlightened, amused, and even shocked by what you hear. And now, the real, the authentic, the one and only Dave Campbell.
Hello and welcome to Clarity from Chaos. I'm your host, Dave Campbell. We are incredibly pleased to welcome back to the show the founder, president, and CEO of Invest USA, Mr. Michael Letts. Invest is a national grassroots nonprofit organization that is helping hundreds of communities by providing thousands of bulletproof vests for their police forces. Michael has over 30 years of law enforcement under his belt. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Well, David, it's always a privilege to be with you. And may I say, the greatest privilege is what you're doing to help get this country lying back where it needs to be. You know, a lot of people think we had November the 5th, it was over. Work has just started.
Yeah. We haven't even really started the heavy lifting yet.
No, you're right.
What I'd like to start with, though, is probably one of the key things that's going on right now, and that's this nonsensical fight over immigration with the judges and the Democrats going to El Salvador, going, oh, worries me, and so on and so forth. And you know, I'd like your thoughts on it.
Well, I think what it does, the very tip of the situation shows just how deep corruption runs, David.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, let's take it from the top. Americans overwhelmingly voted November the 5th for one key issue, and that was we were tired of being unsafe in our own streets. So you looked at the source, what was causing all the violent crime, etc. Key component was all the illegal immigrants who were coming across, 15,000 a day. And we were talking about members that were not just trying to get a better life, supposedly. We were talking about members of the cartel, gang members, murderers, rapists from other countries that had been let go, brought across, you know, child sex traffickers. It was just amazing. So what did this administration promise, especially now that we're at the 100-day mark? Said this would be our first number one goal, is to try to restore some safety first to America again. How do we do it? Well, we said, you know, we've got to get rid of all the illegal immigrants. You say, why all the illegal immigrants? They're breaking the law. They've never been vetted. So just because you're here and don't happen to have a criminal record that we are aware of, David, doesn't mean that you're welcome to stay for no particular reason. You've already broken the law and you have to be vetted. The best way to vet is to remove them. But we concentrated on let's go after these criminal elements first, the cartel members, all these illegal immigrants who have these horrendous criminal records. Well, that's what we did. We spent, after the inauguration, went to work. Tom hit the ground running. We made sure we provided him the support necessary to do the job that he needed to do. Of course, Christie got involved. Pam got involved. You know, the AG, Christie, Secretary of Homeland Security. And we hit the ground running. And may I say that after the first 100 days, we've deported over 250 of the criminal element, 250,000, okay? That's how many we've gotten rid of. So we have been very successful. But here's what's odd, David, is during the Clinton administration, during the Obama administration, not during the Biden administration because they wanted to keep them all here, but during those previous Democratic administrations and during the Bush administration, they literally deported millions.
Exactly.
Not a single complaint. In
Not
fact,
a word.
President Clinton signed a bill to authorize the deportation. And in the bill, remember, when I say in the bill, it was controlled, the Democrats controlled Congress at that time, both the House and the Senate. So they're the ones that drafted this bill. And in the bill, it said that there would be no judicial review allowed, that they were just to be deported immediately. The President Clinton signed it, and that's what he did. Not a word was said about the millions that were deported. No legal challenges. Immediate detention. Kind of congratulations. Now you have a president that puts 250,000 criminals trying to get them out of this system. And they have literally lost their mind, David. They're using every judicial method to try to block it. They're doing every media method to block it. They're getting members of Congress to go to a foreign country and demand that they release some of their citizens, not our citizens, their citizens to bring them in.
No,
it's just ridiculous, David.
I know. It's hard to fathom, Michael, that this is the hill that they want to plant their flag on. Obama deported 3.5 million people.
Correct.
Not a word. There wasn't the first injunction put out there in any of that. To your point, Clinton did the same damn thing. Of course, Biden didn't because he was asleep on the beach.
Right.
But then HR 1526 was passed in the House, is now moved to the Senate, and I haven't heard a damn word from our senators about taking that bill up, debating that bill, and getting it in front of the president for signature. Not a word.
And you remember now we have a Republican-controlled U.S.
Absolutely, and that's what pisses me off, Michael.
Not just with one vote, David. We've got 3 votes. It's 53 to 47. That's a
Right.
good enough margin. You can get something done.
ISA and the House put the bill together to rein in these knuckleheaded judges because, quite frankly, what is it, Article 14, Amendment 4?
Correct.
They completely control not only the Supreme Court, but they control all of the other federal courts. They have
That is
the
correct.
oversight. Yep, they have the oversight on this, and quite frankly, they can do away with them.
Sure can. In fact, should be, quite frankly.
With the stroke of a pen, they can do away with these yahoos. And it just floors me that the House ISA put this together. They passed it, they presented it, and you can hear crickets. Absolute
Yeah, they're not doing anything, David. But here's a dilemma: you've got 2 federal judges, both in Maryland right now.
Yeah, they arrested them.
Yeah,
they arrested one in New Mexico and one in Wisconsin.
One in Wisconsin. We've got more on the list that we're going to be arresting, by the way.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, here's what is so mind-boggling: is the Judicial Association, who remember represents all these judges,
right,
including Chief Justice Roberts, who has a key role in the Judicial Association. The Judicial Association has now come out with a statement that this is preposterous for the administration to do, that it is sending the wrong message, that they are strong-arming the judicial system and are causing them to feel like they are being intimidated and cannot render objective rulings by sending people in to arrest them. You're sending the wrong message. Stop arresting our judges. And here's what is so ironic, David. We're arresting them for crimes, for breaking the law. How can you not arrest somebody just because they're wearing a black robe? What message is that?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, you've got 20 million illegals that came across into this country, and everybody treats them like they're U.S. citizens, right?
That's their whole point.
Biden was giving them, access to Social Security, access to Medicaid, all of the benefits of a U.S. citizen, and now they're screaming like mashed cats because Doge got access to the IRS database, and now Elon and Elon's team is starting to track down these yahoos that were issued Social Security cards and everything else with the pure intent of A, being able to put them on the voter rolls, and B, giving them these benefits.
When 4 million.
Yeah, and you have all of these people that suffered during the hurricanes last year and stuff, living in friggin' tents and everything else, being treated like third world citizens, and we're treating third world citizens like they're U.S. citizens.
And we're treating them better than U.S. citizens.
Yeah.
Here's what's interesting. Talking about the ones that we've deported, and you remember the one with the whole issue, you got to bring Garcia, Christian back, 2 of them that they want brought back.
Yeah.
But here's the issue: what their mainstream media is failing to tell us, David, is both Garcia and Christian had hearings. They had habeas corpus before an immigration judge who listened to their case about should they be granted asylum, found there was no cause to give them asylum, and ordered their immediate deportation. You say, well, why are they saying they have to be brought back? They're going a whole different route. They're saying, well, I know that they were scheduled to be deported, but you deported them as gang members, and you did not give an adequate opportunity for them to defend whether they will or were not gang members. David, who cares? They were supposed to be deported regardless what happens. But there is plenty of evidence that they're gang members. That's why they're one of the first ones to be deported instead of one of the last ones to be deported.
Right. But you've even had the Supreme Court, and I don't think the full bit on this is in yet. They just created a pause.
Correct.
But it should have been a 9-0 vote of allowing this to happen. And I'm still trying to understand, Michael, that the Enemies Alien Act It was a piece of legislation. It was used in prior administrations. I believe Eisenhower used it.
Eisenhower used it, so did Roosevelt.
Yeah. And, where was the dissent then, right?
Never
And
has been any dissent.
and the interesting thing is when I was in the service, there was a place in Pendleton. Now they've changed the name, but it used to be called Jap Mesa.
Not familiar.
And outside of the gates of Pendleton was Jap Mesa. Well, just so the audience understands what Jap Mesa was, that's where they rounded up all the Japanese U.S. citizens and put them in camps in the Second World War. And they did that freely. Nobody pitched a bitch about them doing that or anything else. Now, there's been repercussions. There's been some softening of that whole thing. But at the time, we had just lost 3,000 fighting men
Correct.
at Pearl Harbor. And it seemed, not only the Japanese were rounded up, I believe German Americans were rounded up as well.
That is correct. That is correct.
So it's just the whole damn thing, Michael, is upside down in my head.
You're exactly right. The interesting part about it, David, is it was challenged when that happened, right after that. And here's what the Supreme Court at that time ruled. That, look, the president has the sole authority because the Aliens Enemies Act, specifically says it is not subject to judicial review. And so the Supreme Court ruled at that time, we can't even take this up. But furthermore, they added a statement in there. Even if we could, it is written in such a way that it is the sole responsibility of the commander-in-chief. We wish him well. Because, quite frankly, this is his decision alone, to provide the national security for this country, not the judicial branch. If it doesn't work, that's what elections are for. They recognize that. But now they have totally parted from what the predecessors have said and said, oh, no. We're going to recognize that the Aliens Enemy Act is still in effect and the president has sole discretion. However, we're also going to put their own new caveat in there that he can't utilize that act unless he gets our approval every time. We want to make sure that anybody he's deporting has habeas corpus. That's nowhere to be found in the act. So they just rewrote the law, even though they're not the legislative branch, David. How did they get away with that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, is how could they rewrite legislation from the bench, which is exactly what they're doing, which gets me back to H.R. 1526. And what in the hell is the Senate waiting for? The Senate Republicans have the majority. They have the ability to walk through this bill and have it put on Trump's desk to rein in these judges. And quite honestly, Michael, they're not really reining the judges in. All they're stipulating are the judges' jurisdictional boundaries are such, right? They're not doing exactly what they could do, which is eliminate the entire federal judicial system.
No question.
Which they could do with the stroke of a pen.
Yeah, they also have control of the budget, David.
Yeah, exactly.
It's so amazing. We're talking about Congress for a moment. Whether it's on our judicial process, whether it's the corruption, it's not waste. It's corruption, fraud, money laundering that has occurred with trillions of dollars going back to members of Congress, quite frankly. Why do they not want to do anything? They could easily just say, okay, we're eliminating that from the budget this afternoon. Why do they not want to do that? I think the key is, David, because of this. Nobody is going to take corrective action when they're participating in the criminal activities themselves.
Yeah.
And we have so many members of Congress, members in our bureaucracy, in our executive branch, who are administrators and all. And yes, members in the judiciary. Why do you think we've been arresting so many of them in the last few days who are participating in these kind of activities? And nobody wants to be on the side of having their nefarious activities on display. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to find some kind of narrative to make the American people believe, we're behind you. We heard what you said November the 5th, but we've got to slow this train down. We've got to make sure that we're doing it the right way. And of course, every time you hear that, what does that mean? That means we're not going to do it. We're just going to kind of slow it down enough till you forget about it.
Exactly. And quite frankly, it's so disappointing to sit here and see the effort of the president and the effort of Elon Musk and his team, and only to be stonewalled, not only by the Democrats, and I'm going to say this point blank, but by the Republicans as well. Because the Republicans have the absolute ability at this point. They haven't pissed away the 2 years, but they're working on it.
very strongly.
They're working on it really hard, because what's going to happen is, if they do nothing, if they don't support everything that Trump is trying to do over the next 2 years and get this stuff done, dusted, and legislated, people are going to be just like me in 2 years, and they're going to give them the finger, and they'll probably end up losing the majority, at which
That's
point you and I are going to spend the next 2 years listening to some yahoo filing impeachment articles to get rid of the president.
Well, they've already promised you they're going to do that. They've already laid out their.
Right.
That's one thing you have to say about the Democrats, whether it's smart or stupid. I don't know which one, but they will tell you what their strategy is, and they stick to it.
Yeah.
And they've already laid out their strategy. Their strategy is very clear. Make the American people feel like these plans don't work. They're going to cause increased economic problems, which is
Right.
the exact opposite of what's happening. But they're going to try to convince you of that. They're going to try to convince you that, yes, you need to be safer, David, but you also need to have a heart. We don't want to move people away, be uncompassionate, and put people that were not supposed to be locked up in some foreign prison. So they're trying to just put an end to all that. Because why? Because they don't want these reforms.
No.
Members of Congress, whether they're Republican or Democrat, they don't want them. Why
No.
don't they want them? Well, let's take a look at what we have discovered over the last 100 days. How many trillions of dollars have we found so far? Not billions, trillions that
Right.
have been laundered and fraudulently given back to NGOs. How does this system work? We've talked about it before. You create a nonprofit, you then put key members of Congress on the board. You know, in my days when you were a nonprofit, you serve for free. I mean, that's why it was a nonprofit. Now, oh
Right.
no, you serve on this board, we'll pay you a couple $1 million just for your service. By the way, we have one little requirement. Because you're a member of Congress, when we need funding, which we need every year, make sure this goes through. Now, we're not asking for trillions at one shot. Just our little charity only needs maybe a billion or maybe 250 million. Pennies compared to what's in the
Right.
budget. You just keep passing it. Of course, all that adds up when you have over 1,000 NGOs and all these people getting kickbacks. And it's not just members of Congress, it's members of their family. Well, I don't want to look like I've got a conflict of interest, so put my wife on there instead. And, you know, it still goes to the same pot. And all this has been happening, and they don't want that to end. But they
No.
don't want you to know the truth either. They don't want to be exposed. So they're trying to find the most innocuous way to put this out to the American people that, oh, we're behind him. We're just trying to make sure that, you know, we do this the right way. But don't you worry. We support everything he said. And then when it doesn't happen, they'll come back and say, well, it wasn't very popular anyway. It doesn't look like.
Yeah. And you've noticed Elon Musk had made a comment several weeks ago, maybe even a month ago, about looking at the Congress on how, you know, on $175 or $200,000 a year, how all of a sudden in 3 years they're multimillionaires. You know,
Correct.
let's follow the money. And he made that comment, and it kind of went away, you know.
You know what's interesting on that, David, is initially the comment was, we're going to go after those who have, you know, $200-300 million in their account.
Right.
Then the president said, I'm going to issue an executive order, which he did, that we're going to look at every member of Congress
Right.
to find out. I mean, if you came in with $100 and you've only got 150 now, you don't have anything to worry about. That's a quick overview. You came in with $100 and you got 100 billions in your bank account now, I think we better have a long, nice chat. And you know what's interesting? Ever since that executive order was done, there's not been a word said about it.
Nope.
Now, from the president's standpoint, he's assuming that that's moving forward, okay? Because I've had these discussions with the White House. But quite frankly, I'm disappointed. I mean, love our Attorney General, love Pam, love Cash and those. But look, if you're not going to use the position to prosecute the crimes that have been discovered, and you and I could sit here for the next couple hours, David, and talk about and name after name after name of people who have totally fraudulently stolen from the U.S. government. If you and I stole that kind of money, David, shoot, they wouldn't find anything left of us. Much less, you know, putting us in prison.
No.
But it's amazing to me that we have this kind of evidence, and yet I still don't see the indictments. And I'm pressing the AG, I'm pressing the director for the Bureau. Why don't we have the indictments? Well, it takes time. I said, I agree it takes time, but you've had more than enough time. I'm not asking you to indict the entire country right now. I'm just asking for you to give me a handful of the key major players. That's all you have to do to show me you're making progress. I don't see anything, David.
Yeah, no, but I guarantee you, if if your hand or my hand was caught in that cookie jar, we'd be in
We'd be
some
long gone.
we'd be in some black hole someplace, never to be
Yeah,
heard of again.
you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
And that's the disappointing. And I think part of the ambivalence, Michael, with the American voting public is to that very point. Is, they can say that about the weaponization of the legal system against certain individuals and how they want to stop that. But what about just the essence of the legal system being applied fairly across the board? Because that's not happening. I
No,
mean,
it's not.
you could take weaponization out of the conversation and just say this guy embezzled $100 million or strong-armed or money laundered $100 million through the several NGOs, just like Biden did,
Right.
and try them. Put them on trial. But the American public, they see that duplicity, and I think that has lent itself. They can talk about the credibility of the corporate media and everything else, but the duplicity of the system, I think, is probably one of the biggest detriments to what we're talking about here, because people see this. I
You're
mean,
right.
you don't have to be a rocket scientist to understand what you and I are talking about right now.
Well,
And they see it, they see it all the time.
you're
And at
exactly
some
right.
point, they just go, whiskey tango foxtrot. They just kind of throw it away because there's nothing that they can do collectively to fix this. You can't take McConnell and put him up on charges for doing this stuff, or Nancy Pelosi, or
Right.
Joseph Biden, or any of the rest of them, because it has nothing to do with politics. It just has to do with greedy politicians, Michael.
No,
Period.
you're exactly right, David. And here's where it becomes a very perilous thing for this administration and this country.
Right.
I'm all across the nation, handing out vests, speaking, etc. So we're talking to people from coast to coast. And here's what we've seen over the last 100 days. The first part of my speeches, to begin with, go get them. Yeah, we're going to drain the swamp. Task.
Right. Right.
Middle part of my speeches is, so how many, the indictments about ready? Are we getting ready to move? Now let me tell you what I'm hearing at the end of these last few days we're going across the country. Don't tell me you're all the same as everybody else. Great talk. We're going to do wonders in the cucumbers, and nothing happens. So
Right.
so this really is true. There is a two-tier justice system, and
Right.
nothing's ever going
Right.
to change.
No.
And when you lose the confidence of the American people, you get what you just implied, David. 2 years from now, kind of like, either why do I even go vote, or if I go
Right.
vote, I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know who to vote for because I don't trust any of y'all anymore. You should all
Yeah.
be gone.
Yeah.
And we're going to have
Exactly.
a real problem in this country when we do that. Let me just use another quick illustration. It's going to infuriate your listeners, but this has just came out in the last few hours. We have now discovered, and I can't ever pronounce her name correctly, so pardon me, David, but Obama's oldest daughter, Malia.
Yeah. I saw the news snippet. Go ahead.
Yeah,
But I saw what
two,
yeah.
$2.6 million
Right.
as a consultant for USAID. Now,
Right.
here's the problem. First of all, that's a conflict of interest. Okay, your dad's the president. You're in the first family. You shouldn't be getting outside money. Period. But that you set that aside just for a moment, and here's what really becomes sticky in your craw. What were you consulting about?
Right.
Where is the contract? Where is the work you produced? What did you consult? I mean, I don't know. What did they need? They needed your interior design advice. They needed, how to
Right.
reach young people. What did you consult? Nothing. There is no paper trail for any of it. Now, if you and I had been paid $2.6 billion by the government to do a job, and we couldn't list exactly everything we did in every hour
Exactly.
and justify it, even if we could justify half of it, but we couldn't justify it all, guess where we'd be headed? We'd be headed down to Leavenworth real quickly in handcuffs. That'd been the end of it. But
Well,
yet,
that's
it's
just
another one of those things that doesn't get prosecuted, and people want to know why.
Yeah, exactly. That's just like Chelsea Clinton. You could make the same argument with the Haitian and the Clinton Foundation and the money's being funneled into the Haiti relief, only to find its way into Chelsea's wedding and so on and so forth. And you're absolutely right. And that's to my point. People see this, and it's kind of like, you don't have to hit me over the head to understand that my name is just John Smith and my name isn't Michelle Obama or Chelsea
Hillary
Clinton
Clinton.
or whatever. That's just like the young man that committed suicide with the bullet hole in the back of his head and his hands tied behind his back during Hillary's little thing. They've never explained that.
They can't.
No, they can't. And so I'm beginning to believe people wring their hands over the fact that the American public has lost confidence and is ambivalent. And I would challenge them, if you're going to bring that credibility back, you need to start doing what you and I are talking about doing.
There's no question. That's what I've been telling the administration and having the discussions all the way from the top down is, look, we're in a very critical role.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of great things that we can say, which we did today. Trump did a fantastic job on his speech. What have we accomplished in the first 100 days? But let me tell you what, while people are appreciative of what you've done, what they really want to know is, this is what I hear all the time, just the illustration I gave you about Obama's daughter. Don't tell me about any more corruption until you've done something with the corruption you've already discussed over the last 100 days. For goodness sake, give me some indictment. I don't care if you indict the whole world. Just give me five good people that you know have done something. Show me that you're going to start taking action. And I'm telling the president in those, if we don't respond to this and we lose the attitude you already portrayed, kind of like, I'm getting close to kind of like, you know what? I'm throwing up my hands. This is just, it ain't going anywhere. Nothing's changed. Once they make that determination, you won't get them back. That will be it. And then you will lose in 2026. You will get nothing done in 2028. The Democrats will then come in and say, see, I told you so. He's a great talker, but he can't accomplish anything because nobody likes him. And that'll be the end of it. We will have lost the ability to make America great again and to restore our freedoms and our liberties. And I don't think we'll ever get another chance, David, quite frankly.
Well, I don't either, Michael. And I think you're absolutely right. I think they're right on the edge of the abyss.
They are.
That if they don't do something, and it's funny because I don't particularly like Carville, but when he made the statement, just shut up and sit back, that they're going to hang themselves, I think he kind of sort of hit the nail on the head.
He did.
Because to your point, if they don't start really doing something, and he's done a lot in the last 100 days, but until you start perp walking some of these people for their crimes, you're going to lose people. You're going to lose you're going to lose, you sit there and beat your chest that you're all about Main Street. You're going to lose Main Street if you don't start doing something about the things that have been demonstrated here.
Oh, you're exactly right. And this is what I keep pressing, is that you don't understand how much is in the balance. If we don't deliver and do it now, it can't be 2 years from now.
No.
We have to start delivering now. And I know when I know I've got people that are upset with me in the administration right now. I know that. I recognize that. But when I talk to these key components, the AGs, the directors, et cetera, and say, look, our back's against the wall. You've got to produce something. And I get the response, we're working on it. That's not going to cut it anymore.
No.
It's just, and I understand that there's a lot of opposition from the deep state and others trying to keep these lists buried, trying to make sure you don't issue those indictments. But this is what my point is, from the president all the way down. You want to fix the inability to try to move things forward, how difficult it's getting right now. You want to fix this corrupt judiciary system. You want to fix all these people that are trying to throw roadblocks. You start doing some pictures of members of Congress, members of the judiciary. I'm not talking about the little magistrate at the bottom of the list of the county nobody's heard from. I'm talking about all the way at the very top. You start bringing some people out in handcuffs and start saying, here's the indictments. And yes, they are Americans. They will have the opportunity for a fair and impartial trial. This is the evidence that we have. If they have an ability to defend it and show that, there's a reason or that it's not true and accurate, then great. They will continue to move on in their position. But if they can't, they're going to be accountable like every other American. You do that for about 2 weeks and see how fast the scenario changes in Washington.
Oh, absolutely.
It won't change, David, till we do that, because nobody thinks you're serious about holding people accountable.
No, absolutely. And it's just like the Newsoms and the Pritzkers, and I can't remember that knucklehead that's the governor of New Jersey. They should have just walked in and arrested him.
Correct.
Right? They should have just walked in and arrested him. They should have arrested Newsom. They should have arrested Pritzker. They should have arrested Pritzker for basically calling for violence against the president.
Exactly. They should have
What gives
arrested
him?
Hobbs,
Yeah, what gives
in
them the
Arizona.
damn? Yeah, what gives exactly? What gives them the damn immunity? And that, if they had put handcuffs on those people and perp walked them, people would have stood up and cheered.
I agree with you, David. Let me hear the response that I've gotten from within some of the administration. Well, you would have really opened up hell then. The media would have been all over us. I mean, we would have been in a civil war. We'd have shut down government. I said, you know what, folks? If we can't make some major impacts, we need to shut it down anyway.
Right.
I mean, because right now, is all we're doing is demonstrating that we're the same flavor, just with a different brand. And quite frankly, America's tired of that.
If you're just going to do hand puppets, go with God. Just do hand puppets.
Exactly.
Because like I said, I think people are just absolutely, they're giving a grace period here. But I would say if they haven't started doing some of the things that you and I have just talked about by the end of the year, 26 is done.
I would agree. I think you're being generous, though, David. I don't think we have the end of the year. I think we've got to the beginning of the summer. I think we've got about another month or two, and then you're going to start hearing a loud chorus across the country. I'm not tuning into anybody's shows anymore, any news. This is all corrupt. It's always going to stay that way.
Yep.
And I'm just, I don't want to hear about it anymore.
Yep.
But that's going to be a sad day when we get to that point, David.
Yeah, I would believe so. Well, so let's shift gears a little bit, Michael, and talk about Invest and the importance that it's bringing to the communities out there.
We've got a number of things. Of course, you heard the president speaking tonight in Michigan, how that, he's making sure that he does what's necessary. And I give him credit where credit's due, to make sure that we have a different image for law enforcement, for law and order.
Right.
Of course, one of the things, if I were standing next to him, I'd say part of that image means actually dealing with the corruption. I got a whole box of handcuffs. Can you turn me loose for just an hour, and I'll see how many I can get rounded up for you, Mr. President, at the same time. But here's what he has done. Because of the fact that he's made good on his promises to move for deportation of the cartels, gang members, etc. And the fact of the matter is that we are asked, these brave men and women, to begin to go out and round these people up who, David, quite frankly, are not sitting on the curb with a little lunch pail waiting for a bus ride to take them home.
No.
They are going to actively fight, actively pursue, trying to create as much hell and havoc as they possibly can in order to keep their lifestyle going. They took a big hit. The cartels, you have to realize that it's not just the drugs that they were smuggling across and all the money that they're losing by shutting that down. It was the human sex trafficking. It was just the smuggling period. $20,000 per person. You figure at 15,000 people per day under the Biden administration, $20,000 per person. That's a lot of money, David. We have shut it down now to over 96% has been cut out. We're roughly at 3.5%. That still are what we call gotaways that are still trying to find backdoor entrances that we're going to be to shut the rest of it down. Of course, we need the wall to complete that task.
Right.
Of course, the president, in the meantime, while we're working on the wall, had a very quick, great idea. We'll just make that whole section from California to Texas a military installation. It may only be 100, 200 feet wide, but it's going to be 2,000 miles long. Now that it's a military installation, you set foot on a military installation without authorization. We have a whole different set of rules. Now you're into a military court system, not into a civil court system.
Yeah, and guess what?
You're behind some deep trouble.
Yeah. If you think that the military court, you get a JAG up there, and it's going to be
exactly. See, here's what I tell people. The great thing about military tribunals. You take a look at the civil judicial process. Okay, there are appeals. There's backlog.
Yeah.
It takes you about 3 or 4 years for you to get your case. From a military standpoint, we do it within 30, 60 days. And quite frankly, there's already that are juries that are set who are middle grade officers, that are already set on these military tribunals. Bam, they get you in and out. Here's what they do. They present the evidence. You can present yours. The jury makes a decision, who is, again, military, middle grade officers. Once they come back, that's it. They say,
done.
The evidence was there that you're guilty or you're not. Now, if you're guilty, here's what they do. They pull out the book. According to the military code of conduct, here's the penalty for that. If it's hanging, or if it's, a smack on the head, whatever it is, and then they go on ahead and get it executed within 30 days. So within 60 days, you've been tried, punish, and the whole
Yeah.
thing's over instead
Yep.
of going on for years and years and
Yeah.
years and
Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
So that's why they don't want these cartel members don't want to go through military tribunals. Well, that was brilliant on the president to do. But back on what you were saying, so we're asking these brave men and women in blue all across the country to help round these people up, and yet the cartels and the gang members are better armed and better protected. They have active shooter vests. Our guys don't. 90% of cops across the country don't have this protection. We have the highest number of officers killed in the line of duty in history. We have the lowest morale because of that. We have the highest suicide
Right.
rate among officers. And quite frankly, this is what we push for the president, that it's just you want to show your support for law enforcement. You can't show any better support than to show their families that I care enough about them to want them to come home to be able to kiss their kids goodnight when they put them to bed as well. And
Right.
he is moving towards programs along those lines. We still don't have them in place yet. Kind of one of those things, David, that we're talking about. Let's get our priorities straight and make sure that we
Yeah.
get the programs that are
Absolutely.
necessary done. And sometimes I get a little
You,
frustrated that that's not moving as fast as it needs
and
to.
quite frankly, Michael, some of these crimes that have been committed, although I think the flight to El Salvador and then being walked into that prison in El Salvador is a pretty formidable
Yes.
vision for somebody to start to understand. But it's kind of like once you've done these bad things, you're out of here. And El Salvador says, yeah, bring them on. Even the El Salvadorian president Burkle, I believe, even talked about reparations to the victims
Yeah,
of
no
of
question.
these crimes. And then you have these mutton-headed Democrats going down to bring back not a U.S. citizen, but a Salvadorian citizen to the United States, and that's supposed to be you're supposed to have some kind of hero worship for the senators and stuff. And quite frankly, I've got two befores in my garage, I think, that have a higher intelligence than some of these guys.
Oh, there's no question you're right, but here's what's interesting. The Democrats, the liberal left, have thought this is a cause they're willing to fall on the sword for. They are so
Yeah,
convinced with their partnership with mainstream media that they could convince the majority of Americans that, look, these are Maryland dads. These are just people like you and I who were
yeah,
snatched off the street without cause, sent to a foreign country in some horrendous situation, and we owe it
yeah,
to them to bring it back. When the
yep,
truth of the matter is, they've never been a citizen of this country. They've always been citizens of El
right,
Salvador. And quite frankly, they were tried. People don't understand that. They were tried in El Salvador. They've been convicted in El Salvador. So here's the El Salvadorian president saying, what do you mean? These people escaped our country, went over and hid out in yours. We've got them back now. We're going to make sure they're punished for the crimes that they've been tried and convicted for.
exactly,
And don't you dare tell me that you're going to remove one of my citizens and put it in one of your plush hotels in your country. When we do
right,
it in our country, they don't ever want to come back. What I think
yeah,
is interesting, what's hilarious, David, is the president has told our president that, look, we could do it cheaper than you, I mean, way
yeah,
cheaper than what you're
yeah,
doing it. We're willing to open up our system. Send as many
yeah,
as you like.
exactly,
We'll do it for a whole lot cheaper. And of course, the
exactly.
president has said we open to do that. Then, of course, you saw what the liberal media did. You can't dare send an American citizen to a foreign prison. By
Why the
all
hell
means,
not?
no. You
Why
know,
the hell
you
not?
raised a good question, David. Why not? Where in the Constitution does it say you can't do that?
Yeah,
It
why the
doesn't.
hell not? Well, like always, it's been an absolute pleasure, Michael. Where can people find your website so they can get more information around Invest?
Well, if they go to INVESTUSA.org, it's a charity.org. There'll be a number of things they
Right.
can find on there. First of all, I get asked, do you have social media? We got more social media than I can ever keep track of, David. I'm a simple guy. I don't remember all those
Yeah. Yeah.
log,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah. Yeah.
all on the website. You can find out exactly where to follow us on
Okay.
social media on our website. You can also have the opportunity to contribute to make sure these officers know that we support them. Let me just put out a little plug. We just had in
Sure.
Fulton County, Georgia, yesterday, 2 officers killed.
Right.
They were killed because they didn't have active shooter vests. It was long range rifles. And we need to honor not just their families, but we need to honor those that are serving in that area and let them know that it's not just their community that supports them. It's America.
Right.
Recognizes the sacrifice. I tell people this, we're losing more now in law enforcement than we've lost in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other conflicts that we've had. So
Yeah.
let's try to do what we can to show them how much we appreciate them. Go on there, make a donation. And the final thing I would put in there, David, is folks, do this. If you can't do anything else, next time you see a cop, a firefighter, or a paramedic, say thank you for your willingness to serve and to protect us. That's
Absolutely.
all you have to say. Changes their
Absolutely.
attitude for the rest of the
Yeah.
day, the week, for the month, for that matter.
Here, let
God
me
bless
buy
you,
that
David.
coffee. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
God bless you, David. God bless America. Thank you so much for what you're doing to get the truth out.
Listen, Michael, as always, this is an extreme pleasure. And again, we've been talking to Michael Letts, who's the president and CEO of Invest USA. I encourage all of you listening to go out to the website. And again, it's investusa.org and look at all the stuff, participate, donate, and make your voices heard, because I don't want, and I've expressed, that I think people are starting to get frustrated because we're not moving forward with some of this stuff. We're just, it's just a lot of adolescent masturbation that's going on here. But we need to start really pushing to get this stuff done, to get, these people held accountable for what they're doing. And I really don't give a damn if they're a Republican or a Democrat, or God forbid, a federal judge, or even worse, a Supreme Court judge. I really
Correct.
don't care. Because as far as I'm concerned, they put their pants on the same way I do. And if I'm held accountable to the laws of this country, by God, they should be too. And, they shouldn't get a get out of jail free card just because they're a senator or a justice or whatever. So that's my little bit. So there.
Love it. David, if
So
we
there.
all unison demand accountability, maybe we can get some actual change and some restoring of justice in this country.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Michael. It's been an absolute pleasure. And we'll get you back on just as soon as we can.
Thank you. God bless you. God bless you.
God bless you too, buddy.
Thank you for listening. If you would like to listen to more Clarity from Chaos shows on demand, go to clarityfromchaos.buzzsprout.com or send Dave an email at info@clarityfromchaos.com for information on previous shows. You can also listen to the show on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Twitter, or Google Podcast. Until next time, please remember, it's not about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain. Be well, everyone.